You're watching The Citizen Report, real, in-depth American.
And welcome to The Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and thank you for joining me tonight. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always good to be back here with you. This is part 3 of the mini-series where I am doing a book review, going through the book Secret on the Tarmac by Christopher Sign. And if you know from the previous portions of this mini-series, you know that I'm kind of breaking this down in what I hope will be easily digestible segments that you can watch each episode and you can digest a little bit of information, a little bit of analysis of a chapter. In this case, in this particular episode, I'm actually covering 3 chapters, chapters 3, 4, and 5. Now, to recap just a little bit, let me go back and just sort of recap a little bit about what this book is, generally speaking. This is written by journalist Christopher Sign. Christopher Sign allegedly committed suicide earlier this year. He was most recently a news anchor at ABC 3340 in Alabama. And during what he recounts in this book having to do with the infamous meeting on the tarmac with then U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch and the former President Bill Clinton, that infamous meeting, he got tipped off by it. And at the time he was working at a news station, at a TV station in Phoenix, Arizona. And he's basically talking about he's recounting what happened in this book as it unfolded, basically. Chapter 1 deals with his earlier career, how he kind of developed his craft for journalism. Chapter 2 is the actual where he received a phone call from a well-trusted source of his that he trusts, and he basically was tipped off at that point. He was given an inside scoop that Loretta Lynch had held a secret meeting on the tarmac at Phoenix Airport with former President Bill Clinton. And then chapters 3, 4, and 5, which is what I'm going to cover in this particular episode. This actually has to do with how Christopher Sign initially reacts, sort of leading up to at the end of chapter 5, where they have their strategy in place on how they're going to unfold their strategy concerning how they're going to confront Loretta Lynch, because Loretta Lynch, who was at the time the U.S. Attorney General, Loretta Lynch was going to be confronted by one of their reporters at a particular news conference and sort of put on the spot as to why she met, what was said between her and Bill Clinton. And as was hinted at the end of chapter 5, and I'm skipping to the end of the section that this particular episode is going to cover, basically Loretta Lynch had been tipped off. So we know that there's fixing to be a curveball thrown, because actually it literally says here, then we were told to wait. A curveball was heading our way. So it's very interesting how this kind of unfolds. And let me actually just kind of recap sort of this section of the book. Now, you might be wondering, before I do that, but let me just say very briefly, you might be wondering, why in the world am I even concerning myself with this? Because it seems rather random, and that's a well taken viewpoint on this. And basically, you have to remember that anybody that goes up against the Clintons, I'm not saying everybody, but it seems like a lot of people that do that tend to end up committing suicide, which is rather suspicious, at least. Now, Christopher Sign, I'm not denying that he committed suicide. I'm just, as a journalist, you're supposed to question whether, what the mainstream media is spoon feeding you. Like if they're saying Christopher Sign committed suicide, maybe he did, but a healthy bit of skepticism towards whether he committed suicide or not, especially given that he was at the forefront of breaking the story of that infamous meeting on a tarmac. So it's well warranted to scrutinize that in a healthy way. And as time goes on, I may very well dig a little bit into that. And again, if he committed suicide, I've said this before, but if he actually did commit suicide, then I just have nothing but sympathy. I'm sorry for what happened, regardless. Life can get rather difficult sometimes, it's really just sad whenever a suicide, whenever something like that happens. I find it rather suspicious because he was married, he had children, he worked at the station the station he worked at the time of his death. ABC 3340, he worked there just, I believe, the previous day. If I'm not mistaken, the previous day. I'm going to dig into that a little bit to verify that, but I do believe he was working there just the previous day. He was found dead early on a Saturday morning. So very odd circumstances, shall we say, in the suddenness of it, of course. Now, in Chapter 3, I'm going to get to the part that this episode covers. In Chapter 3, he basically is entering. As you know, if you watched the episode where I covered Chapter 2, he had gotten a phone call from his source. He was out in the parking garage. He's now we're going into Chapter 3. He's coming back into the station. He's basically figuring out, okay, what do I do with this information? Obviously, it's a pretty big bombshell. And he summons the news director, or I should say the executive producer and I believe the news director, and basically they start to form a plan. And I find it rather interesting, by the way. I know this is kind of a slight tangent, but something he wrote here, which I thought was kind of an interesting detail. If you care to know what. I like how, one thing I do like about the writing style of Christopher Sign, by the way, is how he kind of includes details that on the surface may not seem relevant directly to what he's talking about, but kind of adds a little flavor to it. I'm going to just read this one paragraph. It says, things moved extremely slowly and rapidly at the same time. I always kept an extra energy drink at my desk. I opened it. Dan said, "Uh-oh, here we go." Dan knew if I opened an energy drink this late in my day that I had no plans of going home soon. The opening of the energy drink was like the opening kickoff of a football game. I was just getting started. And by the way, Dan is it was a co-anchor at this station out in Arizona, and I thought that was a rather interesting detail. I thought I would throw that in there. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, Christopher Sign, he has basically a meeting with his executive producer, and also the news director. They went into the news director's office to discuss this information. Now, they basically, obviously this was a huge bombshell. I mean, you can't really underplay, or you can't really overstate the seriousness of the then Attorney General Laura Lynch holding a meeting with the former President Bill Clinton, particularly when you consider that Hillary Clinton was supposedly under investigation, all of that stuff. Now, later on, he in Chapter 3, I should say, Christopher Sign actually gives a detailed account of what he was relayed, basically, of what happened. So I'm going to read this to you, and I think it's very interesting. This is on page 39. And by the way, let me just stop for a second. I should have said this in this episode, but if you can absolutely get a copy of this book, Secret on the Tarmac, it is published, by the way, by Crest, C-R-E-S-T Publishers. They're based down in Alabama. You can actually find this on Amazon, and it will ship directly from Crest Publishers. At least my copy did. Now, this is on page. I'm actually going to start at the bottom of page 38 for some context, and then I'm going to read almost all the way through page 39. So I'm going to do that right now. I think this is pretty. This sums it up pretty well as to what was relayed to Christopher Sign concerning what happened. So Chris, who was the news director, and so basically it said, and I'm going to start off with this on page 38. I'm going to go into page 39. Chris wanted to know about my source. He never asked who the source was, neither did Tyson, and I'm just going to add who was the executive producer. But Chris wanted to know my level of trust. I assured him this source came with full credibility, and I was willing to put my career on the line. I explained that Bill Clinton had arrived at Sky Harbor, which, and I'm just going to add for context, that's the airport, then ordered his team to wait while Loretta Lynch's plane taxied into position and stopped just yards from his plane. My source told me that Bill Clinton told his crew he just wanted to say hello to the Attorney General. As Loretta Lynch's private plane slowly came to a stop in the secure area for executives, Bill Clinton was in a vehicle eyeing the plane like a steak sandwich he was about to eat for lunch. I was told the former president was stoic and silent with the Attorney General's plane parked. Staff exited the plane, and Jay said Bill Clinton was focused with a smile on his face. Bill Clinton, with a bit of a lean, spoke quietly to an assistant next to him. The former president wasn't worried about security or how others around him on the tarmac would view the encounter. He wasn't worried about what the security teams thought he would make. Let me start that sentence again. He wasn't worried about what the security teams thought because he made them wait even longer after he chose to wait to take off despite already being late. So I'm going to stop right there, but that's a pretty robust account of what happened in terms of what the circumstances were, the setting, pretty bizarre stuff. And it doesn't take even a kindergartner can figure out there's something suspicious here. Why would you have two planes? Why won't you, if you had nothing to hide, why don't you just meet at a restaurant, or if you're two government people and you actually have, let's say, classified information, then obviously you want to do it securely. But why would you need two planes coming close together? That just doesn't make any sense. So obviously there was already a sense of guilt just by virtue of how they parked the planes right then and there. So that was pretty much chapter 3. And of course, I'm skipping over some details, and I would encourage my audience to please go buy a copy of this book again. And Christopher Sign, unfortunately, he's no longer among the living. He has passed. And but I felt like I feel like this is something that is good to share his accounts from this book, at least the important parts on this show. So again, I'm not trying to make it so that people don't have to buy his book in order to understand what happened. I encourage, and I strongly encourage actually, everyone watching this to go buy a copy of this. But let me get to chapter 4 here, and basically this is continuing on the unfolding of how Christopher Sign, his executive producer, news director, how the station was going to react to this. And basically, it's basically revealed that Dan, the co-anchor at the station, he asked the question, "Hey, isn't Katie supposed to be live in our midday show after Lynch's news conference at Phoenix PD?" So right there, now it's revealed that a reporter at this station is going to actually be at this press conference. Because let me just emphasize that Loretta Lynch is slated to have a news conference, and so the station was already going to have a reporter there. So they have this perfect opportunity now to confront Loretta Lynch on the account of what happened or what was said between her and Bill Clinton. Now they go through this. Now they get Katie, the reporter, on the phone, and of course, again, I'm skipping over some details. But they get Katie, the reporter, on the phone, and she's told what's going on. They need to alert her, but that this cannot be discussed publicly, and basically, they made it clear to Katie that this cannot be just a question. That basically this has to be basically, and I'm just going to read this. This is what Christopher Stein wrote in this on page 44. It was then I told reporter Katie we could not ask Loretta Lynch if she met with Bill Clinton. I explained we had to ask Loretta Lynch to tell us about her meeting with Bill Clinton. And then on page 45 it continues, we didn't want her to say she had no comment, blow it off, or simply say it was nothing. We wanted her to be aware we knew the information and we were not giving her an easy out. Katie was prepared and excited. So at this point, they're creating this strategy, this game plan. And I like how Christopher Stein, he draws upon his experience in football. He uses a lot of those analogies and how he describes these things. If you really think about it, it is kind of like a game. How a coach strategizes. How do you go for that win, and how do you play ball? How do you do that? And obviously, Christopher Stein, it just exudes how well versed he was in journalism, and the good old school journalism. And so they were, like I said, they were formulating a plan to confront Loretta Lynch at this press conference. And at this point, on page 45, chapter 4, near the end of chapter 4, Christopher Stein reveals that they're now less than an hour away from the scheduled news conference. So obviously they were having to act rather quickly because there wasn't that much time to take this information and turn it around into a strategy and output it in a story. So now we're going to go to I'm going to go now to chapter 5, and this has more to do with this takes more into account Christopher Stein, how he actually goes into action initially. And basically, he's going to be writing up a web script, and basically he explains that he's focusing that he then focus on the digital story, and it's otherwise known as the web script. Basically, any news article on a website, that's what's called a web script. So Christopher Stein is working up a web script to be able to get it up, publish it on a moment's notice. So they're like I said, they're getting their ducks in a row. They're getting ready to go with this information. And obviously, like I said, they didn't have that much time to plot this out, so they had to act rather quickly. And of course, the digital expert Rudy, and he walks in, and Chris, and I'm going to go back just to make absolutely certain that I'm getting this correct. The news director basically wanted Christopher Stein to go through it one more time with him. Walk this through one more time. He wanted to make sure there was absolutely no gaps in anything. That this was absolutely, this was airtight. The story, the source, confidence. Christopher Stein's confidence, his information, and I'm just kind of looking at some of the words he uses here. He says, I knew he wanted to make sure there was no hiccup in my story, my source, my confidence, and my information. And then it says, there was never a time when Tyson and Chris tried to prevent the story from getting out. Their job was to make sure it was right because that toothpaste could never go back in the tube. So at this point, like I said, he's being asked to go back over it, and he does. He starts with that initial phone call with his source, Jay, and basically gave him a play-by-play of what happened. Of course, make sure there's no gaps, no items left out. Listen, and it says Rudy listened intently while Chris listened carefully for any changes, concerns, or items left out, and so at this point, they walk to an elevated area in the newsroom called the assignment desk, and of course that's a digital. That's, as in his words, digital team sat surrounded by computers and police and fire scanners, and basically this is, and I'm going to just read this as well. This team was the gatekeeper of digital content ranging from the TV station's website to Twitter to Facebook and YouTube and any other conceivable digital output tool. And, Christopher Sign, he says he quickly wrote a story on a secret meeting, and it didn't take him long to craft those few paragraphs. It didn't take me long to craft a few paragraphs. And basically he's starting out with some, the initial story. He's planning to add in more detailed nuggets, length of the meeting, how the high-profile individuals cross paths, and basically he got the web script written at this point, and Rudy, the digital guy, tweaked a few of grammatical errors. Rudy cleaned up the web script and added separate photos of Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. Rudy was ready to publish the web script at a moment's notice. And then at the end of chapter 5, page 51 at this point, I'm going to just read absolutely, not just some of the words, but every word for word, because I think this is very key, because it reveals the strategy. Everything's in place, everything's ready to go, everything's waiting in the wings, but Loretta Lynch is also planning her counter move. So I'm going to read word for word the remainder of chapter 5 on page 51. Reporter Katie was ready with the pointed question. Rudy was ready with the web script. My bosses and my colleagues and I were ready to go. Then we were told to wait. A curveball was heading our way. Loretta Lynch and her massive public relations machine, known as the federal government, had been tipped off. They knew we were coming, and I couldn't believe who told them. So there's the end of chapter 5, and that is where I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here because, again, each episode I'm trying to provide you with hopefully easy to digest nuggets each time. And as time goes on, hopefully this becomes something you could just, click through, watch through at your leisure, and recount what Christopher Sign went through and what he had to say in this book, at least the important parts. And once again, I would encourage everybody to please go pick up a copy of this book, Secret on Tarmac by Christopher Sign. I am not getting paid to say that at all. I am saying that purely on my own. Crest Publishers has a P.O. Box 595, Chelsea, Alabama, 35043. And you can, like I said earlier, you can go on Amazon, you can buy it there, and it should ship directly from Crest Publishers in Alabama. So obviously, I would encourage you and do it sooner than later. I would hope pick up a copy of this book. So it's unfortunate what happened to Christopher Sign, but I see it now as kind of something that I'm doing here by the grace of God, just kind of sharing his findings in this book. That's kind of the objective, is not to give you every single thing, although I try to summarize it as completely as perhaps necessary, but I try to give you sort of the findings, the accounts Christopher Sign had pertaining to this Secret on the Tarmac. So on that note, God bless each and every one of you. And by the way, you might be wondering, where the heck am I? Because this is obviously not the studio. Well, I'm actually presenting this show tonight from Powell, Tennessee. So on the road, I'm at my grandmother's place. So on that note, I just appreciate you watching as always. And don't forget the website, thecitizenreport.net. Don't forget the Citizen Report is on Stinger.live, Stinger.live. Very importantly, don't forget that the Citizen Report regular taped episodes are now on Rumble, rumble.com. That is where the Citizen Report is. Please go there, subscribe, like, and share the videos, comment on the videos, and help us spread the word about help me share this this show to other people, because I can only do so much, and you're by sharing this broadcast, it really helps me a lot. So and this show is for I give all the praise to God. I give all the praise to God, and I just, to God alone be all the praise. And God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for watching the Citizen Report. I'll try to be more regular in doing these book review episodes. going forward. And obviously, I will be back very soon, for a full regular episode of the Citizen Report. So God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for watching the Citizen Report. And by the grace of God, I will see you right back here again next time. Have a great night, everyone.